In the summer of 1969, while the world watched Apollo 11 touch the surface of the moon, a different kind of landing was being prepared in the Nevada desert. For nearly a decade, Elvis Presley had existed as a phantom. He was a face on a movie poster, a voice on a soundtrack, a memory of a rebellion that had long since settled into the safe, profitable boredom of Hollywood. But as the 60s drew to a close, the cultural landscape had shifted beneath his feet. The world had moved on to the Beatles, Woodstock, and the counterculture, and Elvis Presley, the man who had ignited the fire, was in danger of becoming an echo. Welcome back to Elvis Presley Moments. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the most pivotal month in the career of the king of rock and roll. This is the story of the 1969 comeback at the International Hotel. To understand the sheer weight of this moment, you have to understand the battlefield. In 1969, Las Vegas was not the entertainment capital of the world. It was a burial ground. Musicians called it the Elephant's Graveyard, a place where aging stars went to die creatively, playing to distracted gamblers and conservative retirees. It was the domain of the Rat Pack and Liberace, a cheesy fortress of their past their prime crooners that had no place for the raw energy of rock and roll. For Elvis, the risk was absolute. He hadn't played a proper live concert in 8 years. His last venture into Vegas in 1956 had been a failure, a memory that still haunted him. He confided in his friends, asking the very terrifying question, "What if I bomb again?" But the Elvis who arrived in Nevada in July of 1969 was not the soft movie star Elvis of the mid-60s. He was a man possessed. Following the creative spark of his 1968 TV special, he made a vow to never sing a song or act in a film he didn't believe in again. He had stripped away the Hollywood gloss, training with weights and dieting down to a lean, dangerous 165 pounds. He looked like a panther, sharp, hungry, and physically at his peak. He knew that to conquer a room like the International, he couldn't just rely on nostalgia. He needed a weapon. That weapon was the band. Elvis didn't want the polite studio musicians who had scored his films. He wanted a sound that could rattle the walls. He picked up the phone and called guitarist James Burton, a man he had watched from afar on the Louisiana hayride. They talked for hours. Elvis told him he needed a leader, someone who could marshal a new kind of rhythm. Next came the heartbeat. During auditions, a young drummer named Ronnie Tutt sat behind the kit. While other drummers played for themselves, Tutt played for Elvis. He watched every hip swivel, every hand gesture, accenting Elvis's movements like a jazz player shadowing a dancer. Elvis hired him on the spot. Along with keyboardist Larry Muho Barak and the soulful backing of the Sweet Inspirations, Elvis built the TCB Band, taking care of business. They didn't just rehearse, they drilled. For weeks, they holed up in Los Angeles and then Vegas, working through a staggering catalog of 150 songs. Elvis was relentless. He would stop the band mid-bar, stripping the arrangements down, insisting that they not play the hits like we did back then, but with a harder, modern edge. He was preparing for war. And there was a crucial evolution in the weapon itself, his voice. The Elvis of the 50s had been a raw nerve, shouting rebellion in a high nasal tenor, but the man rehearsing in 1969 possessed an entirely different instrument. His voice had deepened into a rich, resonant baritone, seasoned by a decade of hidden longing. He now had the range to move from a whisper to a roar, blending the operatic power of Mario Lanza with the gospel-soaked grit of the Deep South. He pushed his team to match this intensity, demanding the sound engineers ride the levels into the red to create a wall of sound that would physically hit the audience in the chest. This wasn't the polite background music of the standard Vegas supper clubs. It was a sonic assault designed to wake up a sleeping generation, ensuring that even if you closed your eyes, you would feel the presence of the king. The venue itself was a monolith. The International Hotel was a new breed of casino, boasting the largest showroom in the city with 2,000 seats. It was cavernous, intimidating, and on the night of July 31st, 1969, it was packed with the most judgmental audience in show business. The guest list was a glittering roll call of Hollywood royalty: Cary Grant, Anne Margaret, Ginger Rogers, and his old rival Pat Boone. But the pressure was suffocating. Backstage, the king of rock and roll was pacing his dressing room like a caged animal consumed by a nervous time that he couldn't shake. He later admitted he was scared to death, trembling until the moment he stepped into the light. At 10:15 p.m., the lights went down. When Elvis walked out, the air left the room. He wasn't wearing the rhinestone jumpsuits that would later define his caricature. He was dressed in a sleek black herringbone suit inspired by a karate gi, looking less like a showman and more like a prize fighter. He grabbed the microphone and didn't ease into the set, he detonated it. He opened with blue suede shoes, but it was played at a breakneck punk rock speed that signaled to everyone in the room, this is not a nostalgia act. For the first few songs, the nerves were visible. He rushed the tempos, his energy frantic, breathless, but then he settled into Love Me Tender, and the connection snapped into place. The fear evaporated, replaced by a swagger that Las Vegas had never seen. He took the audience on a 75-minute odyssey. He bridged the gap between his past and his present, weaving the raw rockability of Mystery Train with the sophisticated pop of the Beatles' Hey Jude. He showed a new social conscience within the ghetto, proving he was listening to the world outside the casino walls. But the centerpiece of the night, the moment the legend was truly forged, was Suspicious Minds. It was an 8-minute exorcism. Backed by Ronnie Tutt's thunderous drumming, Elvis turned the song into a physical spectacle, dropping into deep karate squats, prowling the edge of the stage, and driving the rhythm with his entire body. He locked eyes with the front row, where Sammy Davis Jr. was jumping out of his chair, screaming like a teenager. Sammy, a man who had seen every act in Vegas history, later told Elvis, "Man, I've never seen anyone fill a room like that. You didn't just perform, you invented the best." By the time Elvis hit the final notes of Can't Help Falling in Love, the Showroom International wasn't just applauding, they were shaking the foundation. The critics who had sharpened their knives expecting a washed-up relic were forced to write love letters instead. Rolling Stone magazine called it a supernatural resurrection, comparing him to a god returning to Earth. Newsweek declared it a shining artistic triumph. The king had not only returned, he had conquered the graveyard. In the afterglow of that opening night, with the adrenaline still pumping, Elvis held a press conference. He sat with his father Vernon, looking out at the reporters who had chronicled his long silence. He was humble, disarmingly funny and honest, and when asked why he waited so long, he didn't make excuses. He simply said, "I missed the closeness of a live audience. I just missed it." But while the art was triumphant, the business was about to take a tragic turn. In the euphoria of that record-breaking success where Elvis played to over 100,000 people in just 4 weeks, Colonel Tom Parker saw an opportunity to lock down his golden goose. There was no team of lawyers, no weeks of negotiation. In a coffee shop within the hotel, Parker and the hotel president scribbled a deal on a simple tablecloth. It was a 5-year contract, $1 million a year. At the time, the numbers seemed astronomical, but the deal was a gilded cage. It didn't account for inflation, it didn't account for the explosion of rock concert revenue in the 70s, and most devastatingly, it locked Elvis into a grueling schedule of 2-month-long engagements every single year. Elvis, trusting the Colonel, signed his life away on a napkin. He publicly defended the deal, telling reporters who questioned the money, "I knew you guys couldn't write, but I thought you could count." But privately, this contract would become the anchor that kept him from ever touring the world, the heavy chain that would eventually drag him down into creative despair. But in August of 1969, the tragedy was still years away. That summer was about victory. Elvis Presley had done the impossible. He had taken the square, conservative world of Las Vegas and forced it to bend to his will. He transformed the residency model from a retirement plan into the pinnacle of show business. He paved the way for every superstar who would follow, from Celine Dion to Adele. When historians look back at the timeline of American music, the 1969 comeback stands as the moment the boy from Tupelo became the immortal image in the white jumpsuit. He walked into the desert a celebrity, but he walked out as the king. Thanks for watching this deep dive on Elvis Presley moments. If you want to see more stories about the legends who built the soundtrack of our lives, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.